This is The Naked Life with Roxanne Noor. Hello, my loves. Thank you guys for tuning in today. I want to talk about will, how we all have this innate will, and what this will propels us towards. So basically, life and existence is this kind of riddled labyrinth, and will is a kind of guiding post that allows us to move through this labyrinth and basically move towards the light. So there's many different theories around this, right? Freud believed that the greatest will was the will to pleasure, meaning that if, for instance, sex was oppressed, the human being would become neurotic. And in many, many ways, he was correct. And then Adler spoke of the will to power. He basically believed that as children, we were powerless creatures. We were ruled and governed by our parents. And afterwards, our life is kind of this attempt to overcome our feelings of inferiority. So there's will to pleasure, there's will to power. And I can say in my life, I've seen the striving for both of these things. But what I've seen more than anything else that Frankl talks about, Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, he learned from Adler. So he learned about all of this will to power. And then Adler had actually learned from Freud the whole will to pleasure. And Frankl kind of determined that from what he saw, the primary motivational force of man, the main will that man has, is the will to meaning. He had absolutely insane, horrific, but overall an enlightening experience living in a Nazi concentration camp. He was confronted with starvation, with death, with the absolute pinnacle of brutality that brings a human being to their very knees. And he knew and he saw actually that even if a person was trapped, as confined, as malnourished, as horrifically treated as he was, that there is still a choice. And it's an inner choice. And Frankl saw firsthand that what allowed people to continue onward was that inner choice of a why. The why being the meaning to the unbridled madness that they were in. So Frankl developed something around all of this will to meaning. It's called Logotherapy. And it basically states that the will to meaning gives choice and overall a higher chance of survival and to thrive in the world. So logotherapy is based on 3 values. There is the creative, the experiential, and the attitudinal. So the creative value states that we seek meaning in our day-to-day deeds. So this can be our work. Work definitely serves a sense of purpose in the world. We're performing what we do for work, usually 8 hours a day. That is a significant chunk of our life. And how we do what we need to do is also important. That's a part of it in the creative value as well. That when I'm at work, I feel what I'm doing has a sense of purpose or meaning, whether it's just the end goal of making money to feed my family bread, or if it's because of the vision of the company I work for, what they represent in the world. So this creative value, the creative energy, is an energy of production, of producing, of making things. And it doesn't have to just be work. This could be our family life. That is a huge creative value. It can be the way we make bread, the way we run our family, the way we run our very business. So the creative value, very much about producing. Then there's the experiential value. And this is very different because it's not something that we need to do. It's not something that we need to achieve. It's giving oneself to an experience of the moment. So in Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, he talks about a group of prisoners in the Nazi camp watching the sun set together. And this is such a profound example of the experiential. These people who are on the brink of death in an execution camp, stopping to watch the sunset. And this is why beauty is so important. This is why going outside of just what we need to do in life is so important, because it's for just the moment in itself. And when humans give themselves to beauty through a spontaneous experience, we feel that we're really grabbed by life, that we're seized by it and awed by it. This can be the serenity of a flowing river, or the grandness of a mountain, or the euphoria of being with another person. The experiential value is really largely based on beauty, because beauty is where duality collapses in on itself and we become the moment. But Frankl was in a situation most of the time where he could not really access the creative value because he couldn't work his normal job, do what he used to do, be with his family because he was in a death camp. And he was forced into labor, so there were very brief moments to access the experiential value because of this living in real survival mode. So then perhaps the most important value was the last of these values. And at the time, that important, significant value was the attitudinal. So the attitudinal value is how a person chooses to respond to the situation they are placed in. The attitudinal is a way of being. In the concentration camp, Frankl had pretty much only his naked body. He didn't have choices, he didn't have options, which then made the primary value the attitudinal, because the only thing he really had a choice in was how he treated his fellow inmates, how he perceived the situation that he was forced into being in. And the attitudinal value is super, super, super important. I can't stress how important it is, because it gives a source of power to someone who might feel victimized. It says, even if you're in a situation you didn't choose, there is still meaning you can derive from it. This choice of one's attitude cannot be taken away because it comes from within. So when Frankl toured the States to speak, he went to San Quentin prison, and many of the prisoners had read his book and they respected him because they knew that he was in a situation like theirs, and one in which in many ways was a lot worse because he could have been murdered, and yeah, it was obviously a horrible situation. Frankl gave the prisoners a talk on this defiant power of the human spirit. He talked to them about Logotherapy, and he said that their circumstances didn't define who they were, but their response to their circumstances, their response to prison, would shape the given meaning of their lives. And this to them was a form of hope. For example, in therapy, a patient can believe that because they were abused by their father, they just cannot trust men. And men are then cast as violent or dangerous. And logotherapy, what it would do is it would work on this attitudinal value to then reframe the narrative of the past. And after logotherapy, the patient may sense that because they were abused by their father, they know what it's like to hurt. And because they know what it's like to hurt, they want to ease the suffering of society by being kind and to be peaceful warriors along with the others like them. So they would make it less about a world they can't trust and more about themselves and their way of being in the world. In so many ways, we are all at the mercy of the universe. And when we don't have meaning, we get lodged into an existential vacuum of frustration. This frustration manifests itself as boredom, as apathy, as an overall disinterest in humanity. Meaning imbues the soul with vitality. It allows us to give our being to a purposeful cause. Meaning is a catalyst for action. It stands in stark opposition to numbness. Humans are generally just meaning-making machines. In each situation, in each experience, it can really be meaningless or meaningful, depending on how we tackle it. It's our choice, and this inward decision is our greatest responsibility towards ourself and fellow man. Meaning determines the quality of life and how we perceive what happens to us. Meaning writes our story in a very pivotal way. So, my unsolicited advice that's helped me a lot, that could help you guys listening, is to really break it down for yourself, to think about the creative value for yourself, what you do to seek meaning in your day-to-day life, in the daily activities, and what you produce, and how you can imbue it with something purposeful. And then to think about the experiential. What are things you do, not because it's leading to an end goal, but just for the thing itself, whether that's playing the guitar or listening to someone sing or going for a walk in nature. And how can you carve out more time for those experiential values that create meaning? And then lastly, the attitudinal value, like to deeply assess what are my beliefs about myself and my function in the world? What are the beliefs I hold about society, about other people? What are these stories I tell myself? And how can I make the narrative more centered around how I choose to respond rather than what the world has done to me? So, yeah, thank you guys for tuning in today. And yeah, Logos Therapy is brilliant. And if you haven't already, I would really recommend to read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I'm sure many of you have, and just rereading it for myself was a really enlightening experience. So I would suggest it. Thank you guys. Thank you for the support. Thank you for the feedback. Thank you for, being with me on this journey of uncovering, of becoming, of understanding.